Namaste. I happily welcome you all for this satsang. And today is very special day because everyone is on holidays, and it's also a special day because across Europe at least it's been very hot this summer. I hope everyone is coping with the heat very well. Drink water a lot because that's very important. Water is also one of the five elements. So there is something even spiritually also to balance within ourselves as the weather keeps changing. Anyway, I'm very happy to do this satsang today, and I was waiting for you all. So very happy to welcome you once again. Thanks for joining. Having said that, as always, like before we begin, let's begin with a small meditation of breathing. Let's start from there. Let's bring our mind to calmness because the whole day we will be completely busy doing several things. And now is the time when we have to little bit pause. When we pause, then mind becomes more receptive. And when mind becomes receptive, you will be able to consume and digest whatever you hear in the satsang. So it's very important for you to be focused and to stay calm within yourself. Calming your mind is not just being peaceful in just your mind. You should be feeling absolutely comfortable in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, and you should be ready to accept every transmission that happens during this satsang. So let's go through that process first, and then let's take the questions. Okay? So sit wherever you are comfortably. Just sit and relax. Just comfortably sit. Close all the doors, all the windows, anything which is around you. Just close your eyes slowly. Breathe in and breathe out slowly. Breathe in and breathe out slowly. As you are doing this, please place your awareness on your breathing. Observe how the oxygen enters through your nostrils and the carbon dioxide leaves your nostrils as you breathe out. And observe the cool oxygen that goes inside you. and observe the hot carbon dioxide that gets released from you. Inhale all the positivity, all the peace, all the blessings. Stay connected to the divine. Divine is everywhere, everything. There is nothing exists besides divine. Just keep inhaling, feeling the divinity. Slowly bring your palms in front of your eyes. Wink your eyes. See your palms. Touch your face and bring the hands down. I think everyone is feeling very peaceful now. Let's use this silence to fill in something more significant, something that comes from another world. Let's invite all those positive energies. Let's begin the satsang. Let me open my email. Okay. What are the four Purusharthas? Namely, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Thanks for your question. This is one of the most beautiful frameworks that ancient Indian saints ever gave to humanity. The four Purusharthas, or the four legitimate aims of a human life. And honestly, today I feel that it deserves to be freed from the dry textbook explanation which it has been receiving since hundreds of years, thousands of years. But in truth, in reality, it is not a moral textbook or a moral checklist that we have when we travel somewhere. It is a map of entire journey of a human being, which is meant to be traveled because it starts from the most basic survival to the ultimate goal of freedom. The ultimate freedom is moksha, enlightenment, gnanodaya, whatsoever you would like to call it as. I will not start in the same order like dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Instead, it makes more sense to start with artha. Because this is where everyone's life actually begins without any exceptions. Whether we like it or not, or pretending otherwise, is spiritual hypocrisy or ignorance. Now let's understand what is Artha. Artha means wealth, financial security, the material means of living, like food, water, shelter, the basic structure that allows a life to function on this planet. Many so called spiritual people, spiritual gurus, spiritual masters look down on Artha, and they make you feel as if wanting security, wanting enough money to live with dignity is somehow lower, is somewhat not so spiritual or not spiritual at all. This is just nonsense. Because of this, it has produced generations of pretending renunciated people. And the worst thing is that they secretly crave for exactly those comforts while they keep publicly condemning it, denying it. It creates a very deep hypocrisy at the heart of, of much organized religion. It can be any religion, they are the same in this topic. The ancient saints were really very wise. They were wiser than all these so called spiritual people. And that's why they said first, let a person have enough, enough of wealth or enough of security. I remember of a story. Once upon a time, Buddha was giving a discourse, and right in front of him, just in front of him, in front of his eyes, one man was sleeping. And the Buddha's disciple, who was just next to him, assisting him, helping him, went to that man and he beat him. He said, wake up. How dare you sleep when Buddha is giving discourse? Buddha immediately called his disciple and he hit him back. And he was puzzled, naturally, because he was trying to wake up a man who was asleep. But now Buddha called this very man and he took him to task. And he asked, Master, did I do something wrong? And Buddha said, of course. Have you seen his face? He hasn't eaten for I don't know how many days. And how do you expect him to listen to spiritual discourse? First, feed him. And once his belly is full, you can ask him to listen to me and meditate or whatever. This is the wisdom that was there during the times of Buddha. A hungry stomach cannot meditate. An anxious, insecure mind, which is terrified about tomorrow's survival, tomorrow's bread, tomorrow's food, tomorrow's anything basic necessities, has no spaciousness left for contemplating the eternal truth. So please understand that Artha is not the enemy of spirituality. It is the basic, it is the ground floor on which spirituality can later be built. That is the reason why I started with Dharma. It's the most fundamental, the most basic, it's the most ground floor. Then we build something on that. Once we finish Dharma, next comes Kama. What is Kama? In Sanskrit, every word has 7 different meanings. Kama means desire, pleasure, love, sex, the aesthetic, the sensory richness of being alive. Everything is, is Kama. Everything comes under Kama. Again, you have to see that how honest and how maturely the saints included this. The tradition did not say, or it didn't tell you, or it didn't profess anything to you, like renounce all desires immediately. Pleasure is a big sin. Pleasure is bad. Sex is bad. Desires are bad. It didn't say that. It said desire also is a legitimate part of human life. It can be the taste of good food. You can have the beauty of arts, the warmth of intimacy, sexuality, love, laughter. It can be dance, music. This is the Tantra's greatest insight. Embedded right into the structure of Purusharthas themselves. The senses are not obstacles to be crushed. They are doorways. See them like doorways. If you leave them consciously, if you have lived all these things very consciously, that teach a person about aliveness, about presence, about the richness this universe has to offer. A life entirely devoid of kama is not more spiritual. Religions have made you believe that a life without karma is more spiritual, but that is not true. If you believe that life entirely devoid of karma is spiritual, then it is totally wrong. That's why I'm saying the life entirely devoid of karma is not more spiritual. It is simply more repressed. And when we speak about repression, we have learned bitterly across history doesn't really purify your desires. It drives it go underground. It is just growing underneath of yourself. Sometimes consciously you know it, sometimes you don't know it consciously, but it is growing inside, somewhere in some layers. And one day, eventually, it erupts in a far more ugly way than you can ever accept, expect it. Now, if you watch carefully, why I call this as greatest contribution of the saints and how genius is this framework. Dharma sits always above Artha and Kama. And the reason is that we already learned what is Artha, the basic necessities. Kama, the very common normal pleasures. And on top of it comes the Dharma. And Dharma is sitting right above Artha and Kama. And it is not sitting there to condemn them, but it is sitting there to give them shape, direction, integrity. Dharma is a word which has been mistranslated for ages because dharma means duty. Normally, you read scriptures in Bhagavad Gita, do your dharma. What is dharma there? It's duty. Or they say that Christ dharma, Hindu dharma, Buddha dharma, which means religion in that sense. But honestly, this misses its depth. Dharma means something closer to natural law, in my opinion, or right order. If I say right order, then there is a wrong order, there is left order. What is right order? It's all subjective. That's why let me say it's a natural law. There cannot be unnatural laws, there can be only natural law. When I say natural law, it's the way of living in alignment with truth, with one's own deepest nature, and with the well being of the whole. Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu. Let everyone be in peace. Let everyone be in well being. That is exactly what I'm saying here. With the well being of the whole. Not just yourself, but sarve. Sarva means everything. Not only you, but everything. That one doesn't say Don't pursue the wealth, don't pursue your desires, your pleasures, but it simply says pursue them, but let them be shaped by integrity, by non harm, by truthfulness. So your wealth doesn't at the your wealth doesn't come at the cost of someone's suffering. So your pleasure doesn't become someone's exploitation, which means you're earning in a way that no one suffers, and your pleasures are not exploiting anybody. And as I said before, I need to mention it about Krishna and what he said in Bhagavad Gita. He tells Arjuna that even in the heat of war, in the war ground, when the war was live with all the arrows flying above the head, with people having swords in their hand and whatnot, he said, Dharma must guide the sword, and it should not be guided by vengeance. It should not be guided by ego. It should not be guided by blind desire, but with a deeper alignment with what is truly right in that moment, no matter however difficult it might be. He said that there are some rules in the war. If you read Bhagavad Gita, you will understand those rules. There was no war after the sunset, and no one would fight against a woman. No one would fight against the people weaker than you. So there were some rules that they made before the war. And Krishna tells to Arjuna, however difficult it might sound, never break them. Be aligned with the Dharma. Dharma is the invisible architecture underneath a life. It is like a quiet compass. And without it, both Artha and Kama becomes destructive force. Wealth turns to greed, pleasures turn to addiction, and love turns to possession. So if your basic necessities and if your pleasures, desires are guided by the dharma, the natural law of not hurting someone, not exploiting anybody, and if you can channel those basic necessities and those pleasures with these laws, it will turn to be immensely spiritual. But any artha and any kama, without these rules, just wild, just leaving them as they are, becomes very destructive force. And wealth turns into greed. You will never be satisfied, no matter how much you get. And your pleasure turns into addictions. No food can satisfy you. You want more and more different foods. That is not bad per se, but that endless thirst for comforts, for luxury, for sexuality, for anything, that turns to addiction. And love turns into possession because love gives freedom. That's the love what Jesus has taught. And without any dharma, the love becomes a possession. So that's about dharma. And when we have discussed about the basic survival, which was Artha, and on top of Artha, there was Kama. And on top of Kama, we had Dharma. So if you have the basic necessities, pleasures, which is governed by the Dharma, what can happen to you? Finally, let's discover what is moksha. Moksha is nothing but freedom, liberation, gnanodaya, enlightenment. The dissolving of very sense of separate self that was busy pouring wealth, pleasure, and even righteousness. And moksha is the crown of all the four. But notice something deep here, profound here, in how the ancients arranged it. Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha. Moksha comes at the last, not first. And don't think it was the least important one in this lineup. It's quite the opposite. It is at the last because it is the ultimate destination. The other three, if you have lived rightly, naturally, then you go towards. You are not asked to skip Artha and Kama and jump straightly into renouncing this world, pretending desires doesn't exist. You are invited to live fully through security, through pleasure, through ethical engagement with the world that you live in, and slowly through this very living, discover that none of this, however completely fulfilled, actually satisfy the deepest hunger which is in you. It can be wealth accumulated fully, still leaves some kind of pain or unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction. Pleasure tasted fully still fades and asks for more and more. Even a life lived with impeccable track record of dharma, completely admirable and honorable, still leaves a question echoing somewhere. Is this all there is, or there is something else? And it is this exactly, this is the very question arising naturally out of having genuinely lived rather than suppressed the first three steps of life. Only then a person finally come towards moksha. And it is not as an escape from unlived desires, but just like how a mature fruit of desires taste it finally and quietly grows on its own. This is what makes moksha so radically different from simply renunciation performed for the sake of performing, or renouncing the world because of fear, or you are renouncing because of your repression. It's like, let's take an example of a young man, a young man who has never tasted any wealth in his life, any pleasures in his life, who is just running to a forest and he shouts to the entire world, I renounce everything in this world. This is often not free. This is not this is often not free at all. He's simply running away from something which he never actually faced, experienced, and what he has not experienced, that will sooner or later start to haunt him in the forest. As much as it would have haunted him if he was not in the forest. And honestly, he will be haunted more in the forest. And it is because he has never met, never understood, he has never outgrown that particular thing naturally. But someone who has lived that moment, they have tasted that deeply and engaged sincerely with Artha, Kama, and Dharma, and then feels the pull toward something beyond all this person's renunciation, if it comes, is entirely different in quality. It's a totally different quality. Because it is not an escape in this case, it is culmination. I've heard a story, it's a joke, in fact. Once Buddha, Laozu, and Confucius were sitting on the table, and a beautiful belly dancer brought a glass and kept on the table. And she said, this is the juice of life. As soon as Buddha heard it, he said, I don't want to drink. because life is full of suffering. So I'm not even curious to taste it. No, I don't want. And then Confucius was sitting next to him. Confucius is very scientific. He doesn't accept or believe anything blindly. He tests. So he said, I respect you, Buddha, but still I would like to taste it. So if you don't have any problem, I would like to go ahead and taste. He had a little bit of it and he said, well, Buddha is right. The juice of life is really very bitter. So it is indeed suffering. And then Laozu was sitting next to him. And when Laozu saw these two people, he said, I would still like to taste. I would still like to draw my own conclusion. And he tasted. And he drank the glass completely. Completely. And then he stood up. He held the hands of that belly dancer and started to dance. Full dance with full happiness. And now Buddha and Confucius were dumbfounded. They were watching each other's face. They were asking to each other, what's going on? Why Buddha is doing this? Why Laozu is even doing it? Then Laozu stopped and said, well, Buddha, you didn't even drink the juice of life and you concluded that it's suffering. Confucius, you took only a little bit of it and you said, it is indeed suffering. But I drink the complete juice of life. And I'm telling you that it is not suffering, it is celebration. So it is a culmination. It is not fear based withdrawal. It is naturally falling away of what no longer holds any charge. It's just like the way how a fruit doesn't need to be forced to fall off the branch when it is already ripe. Sooner or later, it will fall down on its own. You don't have to do something. Tree doesn't have to do anything. It simply happens on its own because the work is complete. So these four are not four separate compartments of life. They are not competing against each other. They're not asking you to choose one against the other or like choose only one specific thing by rejecting others. There are four movements of a single symphony. They're meant to be played in their proper sequence. Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha. Each preparing the ground for the next. You need security enough to be stable, pleasure enough to taste life's richness, integrity enough to keep both aligned with truth rather than harm. That is very important, rather than harm. And through all this, lived fully, then denied. It's like inevitable turning toward the freedom that was always the real point of the whole journey. Everything was pointing towards the moksha. Without Artha, there is no moksha. Without Kama, there is no moksha. Without Dharma, there is absolutely no moksha. So they are all together. That's why I said it was inevitable turning towards the truth, turning towards the freedom, turning towards the enlightenment, which was the whole point of this whole journey. It was hiding patiently underneath every desire you ever chased, waiting for you to look finally past its chasing itself. So everyone is going towards moksha, whether you want or not. That is the ultimate goal. So go towards Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. Thank you. I will take the second question. When you say Shiva or God, are you speaking about a being, a force, a state of consciousness, or something words cannot capture at all? Okay. Okay. I think this question comes from the expression Om Namah Shivaya, which I use. Um, if I start to speak about it, probably it will take another 1 hour. Um, anyway, it's a beautiful question. Let me try to make it as short as possible. I said it's a beautiful question because, and also a honest confession. Whatever I say next will always be um, a betrayal of truth. Because the moment I put words around it, Om Namah Shivaya, God, everything that you mentioned, I'm trying to shrink the entire ocean in a cup. But since we live in the world of words, which I say when people ask about enlightenment or other kind of questions, and also if we point finger towards the moon, even that is useful, you see. Now let's use the same finger, the same analogy what I gave last satsang. um, without making you confused that the moon itself, but making you just feel that it's still my finger. So when I say Shiva or God, I'm not talking about a being, not an old man in the sky, not even a magnificent cosmic person sitting somewhere in heaven who is constantly watching you, judging you, rewarding, punishing. This idea of God as a being, however you're trying to refine it, however you try to paint the picture in golden colors, or you glorify that point, it's still just a larger projection of human ego. That's why you always see all the gods in the religion, which is just a human, just like us. We're just projecting it. and because it is a human. And why it is a human? Because we are unable to imagine anything greater than human, but we simply try to enlarge his own image to cosmic proportions, and we call that enlargement picture as God. This is why, if you read the Old Testaments, God gets angry, jealous, pleased, because he was made with an image of a human being. And whenever you read any scriptures for that matter, you come across the same patterns: the anger, some God needs to be pleased, some God has anger issues, jealous, hatred, everything. A being by definition has edges, has a not this, um, he has a boundary separating him from everything else. And God or Shiva, if the word means anything at all um, worth meaning, cannot have those kind of edges. Because the moment there are any edges, there is instantly something outside those edge, um, and the totality cannot have an outside, because there is nothing inside outside. So you asked, is it a force? So if that is the question, um, maybe it is a little bit more closer than the human image or picture of God, but still not quite the same. Force suggests, energy moving from one point toward another. It causes a producing effect, like, for example, electricity, which is very mechanical, even if it is invisible for the eyes. This also is a temptation to make the mystery manageable. It's a science shape, something you could theoretically graph if your instruments were, were fine enough to gauge, to measure. But Shiva or God is not a force acting upon the world from somewhere, from some point. Shiva is not doing something to reality from outside the reality. You're understanding? Like, Shiva is not doing something from reality to reality from outside the reality. There is no outside from which to act, and there is no inside from where this is happening. Now let's arrive closer to something true. Although even this will need to be dissolved eventually during the course. Let me say Shiva is a state of consciousness. This is far closer than a human image being or force, because at least here we have stopped imagining something separate from you, something separate from us, doing things to you from a distance, something like that. Shiva understood this way is not an object of experience at all. Shiva is the very awareness in which all the experience, all the objects, all beings, all forces arise and dissolve. It is exactly the way how the waves arise and dissolve in the ocean without ever becoming something other than water itself. It can become waves, it can become the ocean, but it always is water. If you have read Shiva Sutras, then Shiva Sutras call consciousness itself Shiva. They're not describing your personal individual awareness. It's not like my consciousness thinking, my thoughts, my things, my this, my that, my awareness. What they are pointing towards in Shiva Sutras is very vast, unbounded awareness, in which even your senses of being, an individual person arises as one small wave among the countless others. There are countless waves in the ocean, isn't it? This is why the greatest Shaivism masters who follow Shaivism, this said that, which can be very um, scandalous, which can be very, like sounds very outrageous during especially those times, 8th century, 7th century, that you are not separate from Shiva. Shiva is not out somewhere to be worshipped. That you are down here looking up the adobe of Shiva that you are worshipping. Shiva is the very consciousness. Reading these words right now, wondering what Shiva is. But even state of consciousness is still, in the end, is a concept. It's a beautiful concept closer to the truth. It is much better than having those versions of images of beings sitting in the sky, dancing in the sky, because it's still a mental construction. It is still a finger, not the moon. This is why, if you read Upanishads, they tell you again and again. They resort to neti neti, and which means like not this, not this, neti neti. And why they are saying not this, not this? Because they are refusing every description the moment it is offered. Because language itself is built from subject and object. This or that. I am this, I am that. And Shiva or God or Brahma or Brahman, whatever name you would like to call it as, is prior to that very division. Language can always point towards the edge of the clearing. But language cannot walk into the clearing itself and report back. Because the one doing the reporting would already have stand outside what it's describing. When you stand outside already what you are describing, and there is not even outside. So if you're asking me about my honest answer without hiding behind any false modesty or false certainty, when I say Shiva, I'm not describing a being. I'm not quite describing a force, and even calling it a state of awareness, a state of consciousness, is only the closest available words that I can use before you must let go of that entirely. Even that word of a state of consciousness or state of awareness. It's like you are having a raft in the river. There is a time when you have to let go of the raft and you have to swim. Words fails to describe something very significant. It's not because the mystics are bad at writing or bad at expression. And it's not because they are not able to find better words. But the very structure of this language, which requires a namer, which requires a named, a speaker, and a spoken of, cannot cross into a reality where namer and named turn out to be exactly the same thing, wearing uh, two different masks. You have to understand here I said namer and named, one who is naming and one who is named. It's nothing but the same thing, two different masks. Advaita, no two but one. This is why at the end, the greatest teachers stop explaining and start pointing towards direct experience instead. Not because they are being evasive of mysterious or they are mysteriously seeing the subject or mysteriously seeing this entire questioning, but because at a certain point more explanation actually um, becomes an obstacle in your spiritual journey. Every new sentence, every new information adds one more layer of concept, one more layer of complication, one more layer of something that you would like to dig. And that one more concept, that one more layer of concept between you and the immediate wordless recognition that is actually available right now prior to any thoughts about it at all. This is why ultimately, when someone asks me what is Shiva, what is God, the most honest response is not a longer explanation. The most beautiful explanation would be silence, an invitation into meditation itself. Because that silence, entered fully, will show you directly what no amount of my talking, my explanation, my philosophy, my experience, however beautiful, can ever hand you second hand. I can go on more, but as I said, I invite you for silence. So, everyone, thank you so much for being here. It was amazing questions today. I really enjoyed those questions. And I will wait for next week to take up more questions from you all. Until then, I wish you a nice day ahead, nice evening. Take care of yourself. Blessings always on you. Namaste.